Welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into a totally mind-bending, grand-scale theory today, pieced together from whistleblower testimonies and fringe research. We're exploring the wild claim that human history hasn't been random at all, but rather systematically directed by an ancient, non-human intelligence. We're talking about an empire that supposedly controls humanity not just by hiding in the shadows, but by literally hacking our biology.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the sources we're looking at today lay out a staggering proposition. They want us to consider a scenario where every major historical shift is actually just a move on a genetic chessboard, played by an extraterrestrial force. Now, whether you view this as literal truth, like some whistleblowers absolutely do, or you see it as a massive psychological archetype reflecting our own modern anxieties about control, the sheer details of this alleged genetic manipulation agenda are absolutely fascinating to break down.
So here is our roadmap for today. First up, the Alpha-Draconian blueprint. 2. Engineering elite bloodlines. 3. The systematic breeding program. 4. Cloning and consciousness transfer. And finally, we'll wrap up with the ultimate agenda. All right, Section 1. The Alpha-Draconian blueprint. According to the lore compiled in our sources, who exactly are the Alpha-Draconians? Well, they're described as a towering reptilian species. We're talking 7 to 8 feet tall. They allegedly originate from the Draco constellation, specifically tracing back to Thuban. Fun fact, Thuban was actually the pole star that ancient human builders aligned their pyramids to thousands of years ago. But what really defines them is their society. It's described as this incredibly rigid hierarchy where rank isn't just a cultural thing, it is biologically enforced. And that deep biological focus totally extends to how they allegedly conquer. The sources suggest that the Alpha-Draconians preferred shape societies subtly. I mean, sure, they supposedly have advanced spacecraft and weaponry, but their real long-term dominion strategy, it's genetics. They're framed as these cosmic evolutionary architects who tinker with the DNA of younger species to ensure compliance, rather than just rolling in with an overt military invasion. Which brings us to Section 2, Engineering Elite Bloodlines. So how exactly does an extraterrestrial force govern a planet of billions without, ever showing their faces?
The breakdown here brilliantly illustrates their alleged macro-level plan. You've got the pure Alpha-Draconians, right? The apex commanders calling the shots from the Draco constellation. But to control Earth on the ground, they supposedly introduced very specific genetic markers into certain human lineages. The ultimate goal was to engineer a hybrid class of elites. Leaders who were human enough to blend into earthly society, but distinct enough biologically to interpret and follow draconian commands. They're a bridge between worlds.
So conspiracy researchers look at those ancient myths, royal bloodlines, dynasties claiming literal descent from dragon gods, and they don't see folklore. They see the results of actual genetic tampering. By establishing these elite bloodlines, the Draconians allegedly created a brilliant system of soft control. They embedded the idea of a divine right to rule directly into our cultures, cementing social hierarchies and engineering a population that is essentially naturally oriented toward obedience.
Moving right along to Section 3, the systematic breeding program. Because apparently this genetic manipulation didn't just stop with ancient kings.
Our sources feature the testimony of an alleged survivor named Alan Markman, and he describes these horrific, highly systemic breeding programs happening today. These groups are actively hunting for very specific traits to create perfect biological vessels. They look for physical markers, like an AB-negative blood type or specific Eastern European heritage. Some whistleblowers even claim humans are actively being hybridized with other reptilian races, like the Saurians of Bellatrix Orion, to function as literal super soldiers. They're also seeking out rare spiritual markers, like old soul vibrational profiles and a very specific high-level psychic talent known as theta.
Now, what's genuinely chilling here is the sheer calculation involved. Markman asserts this reality with a brutally simple quote, "I'm planned." He claims his mother was essentially mind-controlled, used as a breeder by human occultists and Draco handlers. They were meticulously, coldly trying to produce a very specific physical and spiritual vessel that they could exploit for their own dark operations. But why? Why do they want these highly specific, psychically gifted theta individuals? Well, according to Mark Gallatin, one primary reason is to exploit them as astropaths. The claim is that the technology in these secret space programs is so advanced, literally moving across space, time, and entirely different dimensions, that standard computers just can't handle it. It's wild to even think about, but they allegedly require human children with extreme psychic senses to interface directly with holographic panels, navigating these ships through dimensional gates by reading energetic fields so they don't get lost.
That takes us to Section 4, Cloning and Consciousness Transfer. To sustain an infrastructure this complex, they allegedly rely on some incredibly bizarre advanced technologies.
The testimonies outline a completely artificial life cycle. It starts with extracting genetic material stored in massive off-planet cryogenic tubes to incubate organic clone vessels. From there, they supposedly use technology to rapidly age the clone, literally taking a body from an infant to 30 years old in a matter of moments inside a machine. Finally, there's the forced transfer of a person's consciousness, their soul or mind, into this new lab-grown vessel. Markman actually claims his own consciousness was forcibly transferred from a previous body into his current one when he was just 2.5 years old.
But there is a massive biological flaw in this whole system: 6 to 7 years. According to the source material, that is the remarkably short average lifespan of a modern, fully organic clone. Whistleblowers state that something at the mitochondria level just breaks down rapidly, completely mimicking accelerated aging. This means that if an elite figure or a military asset is being cloned, they require constant rolling replacements every few years just to maintain the illusion of a normal, continuous lifespan.
And the technological horrors don't stop at cloning. Whistleblowers like Tony Rodriguez and Michael Gerloff talk extensively about time travel and age regression used in a program called 20 and Back. And this is just brutal. The claim is that recruits are forced to serve a 20-year tour of duty as slaves, often out on Mars or the asteroid Ceres. But at the end of their service, their memories are completely wiped. They are chemically and technologically age-regressed back to childhood and then time-traveled back to the exact moment they originally left Earth. They live that entire time span twice, completely unaware of the horror they just endured.
All right, let's bring it all together with Section 5, the ultimate agenda.
So the crucial point is how we actually interpret all this source material. The literal interpretation, believed by the whistleblowers, is that physical extraterrestrial overlords are actively manipulating human genetics to create a compliant slave grid. In fact, some sources claim this manipulation is escalating right now into a nanotech mutation of humanity. They argue that nanoparticles are being introduced through vaccines and processed foods to literally turn humans into internet-capable cyborgs, completely vulnerable to individual DNA-targeted attacks on our biofields. Now, on the flip side, researchers offer an archetypal interpretation. They view these sci-fi horrors as a profound mythological mirror. It's a narrative that perfectly reflects our very real, earthly anxieties about unaccountable elites and the fear of losing our human identity to massive, systemic architectures of control.
But honestly, the researchers and our sources come to a pretty unifying conclusion. Regardless of whether you view the enemy as a literal, physical reptilian from the Draco constellation, or just as deeply corrupt human power structures right here on Earth, the solution remains identical. The true battle is about reclaiming human dignity. It's about demanding transparency, asserting our self-determination, and finding spiritual unity to reject any system that relies on fear, division, and hierarchical oppression to control us.
Which leaves us with a final, massive thought to chew on today. The story of the genetic manipulation agenda really challenges us to look closely at the hidden structures of power in our world. So, whether the Alpha-Draconians are literal conquerors of the galaxy or simply dark shadows of our own human psyche projected onto the stars, will we bow or will we rise? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I'll catch you next time.